Good morning, church. My name is Andrew Durr, and I'm a practicum student with SEO Ohio. I've been interning here at Delta for the past few months, and this morning I have the privilege to read with you Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. Saturday evening, when the Sabbath ended, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome went out and purchased burial spices so that they could anoint Jesus' body. Very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" But as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man, clothed in white robe, sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Look, this is where they had laid his body. Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there, just as he told you before he died." The women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered, and they said nothing to anyone because they were too frightened.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Well, good morning, church. My name is Mike. I get to be the pastor here along with my wife, Ashley, and I'm so honored to preach on Easter Sunday today. Oh, man, exciting. So we're finishing our Mark series, Who Is This? And Andrew just read from Mark 16, the resurrection story. An angel appears to the women. It's important to remember in those days, women were not legally allowed to be witnesses in court, so it would not make any sense to make up a story where women were the only or the first witnesses to something really, really important. But some details about Mark. We kind of been to recapping each time. The likely author was someone named John Mark, who appears in Acts and a few other books. Worked with Peter, Peter the disciple. This is most likely that's who wrote this book. There's some church history, some tradition that about 70 years after Jesus would have been on the earth, that says Mark and Peter were friends, and Mark hung out with Peter. So we have record of that from the early church. The date was probably between 60 and 70 AD. So within maybe 20 years, 30 years of when Jesus was on earth, was Mark written. There's some pretty good reasons to believe that. Some of the themes for Mark: action and pace. It moves fast. Immediately keeps showing up in Mark. Immediately this happened, then suddenly, and then immediately, over and over again, about 40 times or so. Jesus is the suffering servant. Ashley preached on that. Jesus has power and authority over every area in life, but also mystery. There's this element of mystery that Mark weaves into his story of Jesus. So often, Jesus will do something and command people to not talk about it. Just don't tell anyone. Don't need to share who I am. Not 100% sure why, but it seems like Mark was comfortable with this mystery, and that's going to be a good segue into the final message of this series. We've been focusing on the mystery. Who is this? Hey, if you're able to, I know we've been up and down a little bit, but we like to stand in honor of the reading of God's word. So if you're able to, I invite you to stand, and together we're going to read Mark 4:41. This has kind of been the core theme verse for our series. Let's read it together. Mark 4:41. The disciples were absolutely terrified. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. "Even the wind and waves obey him." Mark 4:41. Yeah, it's never clear if we do the reference or not, but thank you so much, church, for reading together. You may have a seat. All right, Jesus, my prayer is simply that you speak more powerfully than I could speak today. Help us know a little bit more who you are. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to put someone on the spot a little bit today. Who has the closest birthday to right now? Which is Haven? April 7th, which is 2 days away. Is anyone closer to April 7th? No? Okay, which would have to be either yesterday or tomorrow or today. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I need a little bit of crowd participation. We're going to sing happy birthday to Haven. Okay, are you guys familiar with like the conductor moves? Like, like when the conductor does this, what does that mean? Like a little louder. What about this? Stop, right? And that's, okay, so can we go, and pretty good. Okay, that's going to be really key. So you see that, watch the hand. Okay, I do that with my son. This is the bird. Yeah, but for right now, this is the, all right. We're going to sing happy birthday, but I'm going to conduct us, right? We're going to sing happy birthday to Haven, okay? Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Haven. Happy birthday. Okay. All right. So happy birthday, Haven. Does anyone want to punch something right now? You have that feeling of like, I didn't like how that ended? Yeah. I have like a pit in my stomach of like, that didn't feel right. We didn't finish it, right? We left the ending hanging. Let's finish it. Happy birthday to you. All right, there's something in our brains that we need resolution, right? Especially with melodies. Like something about melodies, if it doesn't resolve, it just like leaves you anxious and tingly and like that doesn't feel right. And I think God did make our brains, for the most part, to seek and need resolution, something to end well, to close the circle, to finish the story, to land the plane. We don't like gaps, we like resolution. But I don't know if you heard the passage that Andrew just read. What was the last verse there? Well, let's set up. As the women go into the tomb, the angel says, he's risen. Go tell the disciples. And what's the last verse? Mark 16:8. The women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered, and they said nothing to anyone because they were too afraid. The end. Now, Mark doesn't say the end, but I added that in because that is how Mark ends. Now, we'll get a little technical here. There has been some verses added to Mark, but our manuscript evidence that we can find, the earliest and best manuscripts for Mark, don't have anything past this ending. It's not until a couple hundred years after that there's an ending that says, then they saw Jesus and he gave them some final teachings and said, so I think some Christ follower in 300 or AD said, I don't like this. I need to resolve it. But what Mark and the Holy Spirit, how he ended was this: Jesus is risen. Go. They ran away, and that's it. Well, it's like, but what happened? Where's the resolution? How could it end there? How could it end on this cliffhanger? Right? It's not like, season 2 coming next fall. Like, no, that was the only gospel Mark wrote, and his was the first one. He left it on this cliffhanger of the angel said he was risen, go and tell the disciples, and that's how it ends. And I think what Mark is doing is he's inviting the reader to say, what are you going to do with this story that I've given you? I've given you this picture of a Jesus who's all powerful, a Jesus who, as we've preached, I'm going to talk about, he said I'm going to die and rise again, and now the tomb is empty. What are you going to do with this? Not giving you the full story, not giving you the full resolution. What are you going to do with this information of an empty tomb and this Jesus that I've written about? His power over life in all areas of life. That just doesn't, there's so much in our human nature that says that doesn't make sense. Why didn't Jesus come back and have these, again, the other gospels do show that, but man, I think if you're Mark and you're trying to prove he's the Son of God and he has power over every area, right? Have him have these moments with the Pharisees and the Romans, like the delicious I told you so moment, like where he shows up and like, I'm back, and all these satisfying endings that it could have happened. But Mark doesn't do that. Mark kind of cuts off the melody before it resolves. what are Mark and the Holy Spirit who inspired him, what are they thinking? Why not resolve it and give us a nice, clean, easy ending? And I think what God is doing through Mark is inviting us into what I'm going to call the gap today, inviting us into the gap. Something that doesn't have perfectly resolved all the answers, fancy, nice, and neat, but the tomb is empty. So what are we going to do with that? And so the question today is, who is this God of the gaps? Who is this God of the gaps? Now, God of the gaps can also be used, apologetically. It can be used of whenever someone doesn't understand something in life, they just use God to fill it. And so I'm not using it in that. If you're familiar with that term, I'm not using it that way. And if you're not familiar with that term, that's okay. Don't worry about that too much. But for me, this view of this God tells a story and it leaves a gap. It leaves us a little uncomfortable. It leaves us wanting more, needing more. But I think the story is inviting us to step into the gap. Can I have my strong and amazing assistant, can you grab the whiteboard for me and put it right here next to the pulpit? That would be great. Can we give it up for Andrew one more time, everybody? Yeah, I think right about here would be great. Thank you, sir. I love doing whiteboard teaching, so we're getting a whiteboard teaching today on Easter. So just get ready for that. Yeah, but Mark, reading this ending and trying to think through and pray through, what is Mark trying to do? I think he's trying to invite the reader to say, listen, I told you about this Jesus who said he would die and rise again. Now the tomb is empty. Are you going to have, I think what Mark is saying, are you going to have more faith than the disciples who never seem to fully get it? What are you going to do, reader, with this story? Are you going to trust in this Jesus, trust in this story? But he's giving us a gap. And I think Mark does this throughout his story. I think Mark invites us to meet Jesus in gaps in life throughout his book, throughout this story. I mean, what's a gap? Just to clarify, what's a gap? When I say gap, it's an empty space between two things, right? It's something, right? It's that when we finished the happy birthday too early, it was that space between where we ended and where it should have ended, right? That something that was missing that maybe should have been there. But Mark invites us to meet in the gap. So over the next, Lord, I ask for your help, 15 minutes, we're going to go through three kinds of people in Mark and the gaps in their relation to Jesus. All right, that's the plan today. We're going to look at three kinds of people, and I think there are probably each of these kinds of people here today, and I pray that the Holy Spirit can speak to each of us where we're at, how we relate to some of the people we're going to see here in Mark. We're going to look at three kinds of people: Pharisees, the disciples, and then we're going to look at a mother and a soldier who had a similar experience with Jesus. First, let's look at the Pharisees. God of the gaps, the Jesus who invites us into the gaps. All right, so what was Pharisees' relationship with Jesus? There's a couple times in Mark where, here's what it says, Mark 8, 11, and 12. They, the Pharisees, demanded that Jesus show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. Now keep in mind, Jesus had been doing that constantly. All right, so it's not like he hadn't done any miracles yet. But when Jesus heard this, he sighed deeply in his spirit. Anyone ever relate to that emotion? Maybe, I don't know if he eye rolled a little bit. Maybe he's a human too, but he did it humbly and with love, I'm sure. When he heard this, he sighed deeply in his spirit. Why do these people keep demanding a sign? I tell you the truth, I will not give this generation any such sign. This attitude we see with the Pharisees again when Jesus is hanging on the cross. And he says, let this Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross so that we can see it and believe him. Or this attitude of, okay, if you want us to believe you, Jesus, do a little miracle. How would you prove it to us? Oh, Jesus, you're up there. You want us to believe you? Why don't you hop on down from there since you're so powerful? Right? What's the attitude the Pharisees have here? It's that kind of, my suit jacket's a little too tight, but kind of crossed-armed, like, what that. What's the attitude when you're turning up your nose to someone, right? It's kind of like, prove it to me. Like, I don't. Right? There's this block. There's this pride. There's this what I'm going to call unwillingness. There was an unwillingness to believe. Jesus had done so many miracles, and the Pharisees were around. Right? It's not like Jesus kept doing miracles and the Pharisees showed up just too late. Oh, you missed it again, Pharisees. No, they were experiencing the miracles. Jesus was hanging around Pharisees, especially if you read Matthew. He's around the Pharisees all the time. The Pharisees saw the miracles, but their attitude was, well, I just need one more. Or well, if you do this, maybe then I'll believe you. It was this attitude of hardened, of pride, of turning up their nose, of I'm not willing, and unwillingness. And so here's my portrait in two-dimensional artwork. Okay, the Pharisees, they had all the education you could need. They knew the scriptures. They had tons of good works. They didn't just know the scriptures. They genuinely tried to live following all the rules. Can this side see the board okay? Okay. Or they had everything you could need. They were totally filled up, but they had one little gap. One little gap. And that was simply the gap of being open and willing. Jesus, do one more miracle. Jesus, fill this gap. Jesus, build a bridge right now, and then I'll believe. And how did Jesus respond? No. No, you keep demanding a sign from me. Jesus left this gap there for them. See, God is jealous for your love, but he's not desperate for your approval. I'm proud of that line. I came up with that. God is jealous for your love, and he'll come out of heaven and he'll put himself on a cross for your love. But he's not desperate for your approval. He's not just sitting there, oh, tell me what to do so you can finally believe in me. No, he's God. He's not a slave to your whims or our whims or the Pharisees' whims. He invites you, but he says, come willingly, come humble, broken, and ready. The Pharisees who had their arms crossed and their nose up, give me one more. One more. And he says, no. No, if that's your attitude, I'm not a slave to your whims. He didn't fill gaps on whims. Jesus was okay leaving the Pharisees with their gap of unwillingness. Right? Because he could have done one more. I don't think it would have made a difference. He did plenty miracles. Right? He could have come off the cross. He did something better. He died and then came up out of the ground. Right? And there were some Pharisees who followed, who believed. Joseph, Nicodemus. So it's not like, oh, if you're a Pharisee, you're disqualified. No. But that attitude of just give me one more. God, I'm not going to believe in you, God, until you fix this problem in my life. Or God, I can't believe in you because this happened to me or to my brother or to my, that attitude of I'm not going until you, God. Right? The crossed arms, nose up at God, an unwillingness, a hardness. The Pharisees had a gap of being unwilling. And God is a deeply loving God, but he's not desperate for your approval. He's okay with you. He's okay with leaving you that gap. He's not a vending machine where if you just put enough in, it's going to automatically come out. He's a relational God. That's one kind of gap that we see in Mark. He's the God of the gaps. He's not a slave to your whims. He's not. I mean, he can do what he wants, but in Mark he shows if the attitude is, well, God, I'm not going to until you may be waiting a long time. That's one kind of person, the unwilling. Second kind of person, the disciples. The disciples. I know describing a video over talking isn't always the best method, but I saw a digital skit. I think it was maybe Saturday Night Live, but it was the husbands and their missing wives, and it was set up like a mock documentary. And the husbands go, "I don't know where my wife is gone. She's disappeared." It shows them running out of the house. "Where are you?" And then it cuts to the wives. Like, "I was on a business trip and I put it in our calendar." And it's like, "Well, it says work in DC. I don't know what that means. It's a cryptic note." Right? There's a note on the fridge that says heat at 420 for 45 minutes. What does that mean? It's like the wife left him some notes. She communicated right, but sometimes that stereotype of like the kind of airheaded husband, like, I don't know what's happening. Where is she? That was the disciples. 3 times Jesus said, "Hey, I'm gonna die, and then I'm gonna raise again." And then when it starts happening, they're like, "What's going on? What's happening? Who could have seen this coming?" And just for proof, Mark 9:31-32, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of his enemies. He will be killed, but 3 days later he will rise from the dead." They didn't understand what he was saying, and they were too afraid to ask what he meant. What could that mean? He's going to be killed and then rise again. What kind of metaphor is this? Right? And Mark presents the disciples as these kind of goofballs a lot. Right? Jesus, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen 3 times. Then it starts happening. The disciples Judas betrays him. Ashley spoke about it Friday. Deny him, flee. They're scared and they're hiding. Jesus gave them a lot to work on, but yet they still couldn't put the pieces together. So I'm going to call the disciples. The Pharisees were unwilling. The disciples were unsecure. I know that's not the right way to say it, but it matches, right? Unwilling, unsecure, and maybe you'll remember it. Disciples were unsecure. God had given them a bunch. Here's the way I presented their gaps. Right? God had gotten them through a lot. He had done miraculous things. He had given them prophecies. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And at the next gap, it's like, well, how are we going to get across this gap? It's like, guys, can you just maybe think back to 3 weeks ago when he told you this was going to happen? Or, maybe 3 months ago? Can you just remember a little bit what he talked about? Right? And isn't that, if you've been a follower of God for a little bit, isn't that kind of us? Like, every time the next storm comes, every time the next, I don't know which way to go, "Oh, God, where are you? Have you forgotten me? Have you left me?" Right? We like to judge the Israelites because they kept forgetting, but we do the same thing. Sometimes we just need to look back. Oh, yeah, God got me through there, and he provided there. And did he say hard times are going to come? Yeah, he did. Did he say I'm going to be with you? Yeah, he did, but I don't feel like he's with me now. So God, make me feel it. Come on, guys. Don't be so unsecure. Right? Maybe you look back a little bit. Maybe it helps. Ashley and I were doing this on vacation, writing down all the things God has done here at Delta Church in just the 2 years we've been here. Miraculous things God has done. Sometimes writing things down is a holy spiritual exercise. As a saying, a short pencil is better than a long memory. All right, I know we don't use pencils anymore. A saved document is better than a long memory, right? Right. Sometimes writing things down is what we need to do just to see ourselves, like, put it down in some kind of permanence. Okay, God has done this. God has done this, and he's done this before. Maybe we can have faith that he'll do it again. Right? And Jesus, he gave them plenty. Right? It's like, Jesus, he could have given us some more. Could you have risen in 2 days or 1 day? Or Mark, could you have shown us how the story ended and just made sure it was all perfectly and it was all nice? No. He was okay with some gaps there. He's gotten them through gaps before, and he's okay with leaving a few gaps now. I'm preaching to myself right now, right? It's like, God, okay, if this is really true, just for the 498th time, just give me a sign, or just give me that feeling or that sense. It's like, maybe I can trust a little bit. I don't want to be so unsecure. If God has proven himself before, if he's spoken to you before, why do we freak out? Why do we have so little faith? And it's not a call to try harder, but it's just a call to trust more. Just a call to trust more. Probably a lot of disciples in this room. And even when we are unsecure, he's still gracious and he's still good and he's still faithful. So some people are unwilling, right? Arms crossed, nose up. Some people are unsecure, just freaking out, anxious. There's one other kind of person I think that might be in the room today. And I think if anyone hears this message, it's this last kind of person. We're going to look at a mother and a soldier. A mother and a soldier in Mark. There's a mother in Mark 7:28 through 30. This mother, she came to Jesus. She needed healing. It is a difficult passage. You need to sit with it and study it, but I can't get into all of it. But Jesus has this back and forth with her. She's Gentile, and Jesus essentially says, but my mission is to the Jewish people first, which is true. But she says, Lord, even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat the scraps from the children's plates. Good answer, Jesus said. Right? And she, in this moment, she's comparing herself to the puppies. And I'll say the Greek word here is more of puppies than it is like street dogs. It's like even the puppies can eat from the table. Jesus marvels at her faith. He says, good answer. Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter. And when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone. And this attitude from this mother wasn't, God, I need you to give me everything you've given that person that I see. I need you to bless me as much as you've blessed them. No, her attitude was, Jesus, I just need something from you. It doesn't have to be as much as anyone else. I just need something. Jesus, can you give me a crumb? Can you give me something? And he said, wow. And the way Mark paints the story, this little bit of faith was worth more than the Pharisees or the disciples who had all the reasons, all the faith in the world. That little bit of faith. And Jesus said, wow, yes, you can have the healing that you need. The woman's heart was true, even though her credentials were wrong. And that's such a contrast to the Pharisees who had all the credentials, but their heart was wrong. Listen, if you're in this room, there might be a lot you don't have, especially on the religious side. The knowledge, the history, the experience, the answers, the right words to say. There might be a lot you don't have. Here's the last one. There might be a lot of gaps in your life. But do you have a little bit of desperation? Do you feel desperate? Do you need something from Jesus? Is there some part of you that believes Jesus could do something, anything for you? Do you feel like that mother? Or like the soldier in Mark 15? Go ahead to that next verse. Thank you. This is Jesus on the cross, displaying a similar kind of faith. When the Roman officers who stood facing him saw how he died, he exclaimed, this man truly was the Son of God. So a Roman officer was watching Jesus die. He's the one who exclaimed, this truly was the Son of God. Do you know how many people in Mark correctly identify that Jesus is the Son of God? One. This is the only person that Mark says actually, on some level, got part of who Jesus was. A Roman centurion who just minutes before, it was either he was a part of it or his men were a part of it, gambling over Jesus' clothes, who just minutes and hours before mocked Jesus, punched him in the face, made fun of him. Right, that was his very recent history, literally antagonizing Jesus, presiding over his death and his torture and his humiliation. But something in him watching Jesus die said, this is the Son of God. Son of God, and Mark doesn't explain what Son of God means, but it's something powerful, something divine. I think that's the point. Mark doesn't need to explain it all. And the Roman centurion surely couldn't have had all the theological answers that we can have now, but he knew something was different about this man. Something was bigger. Something was special about this. Listen, even I, done a couple years of school studying the Bible. Jesus is God and God's son. I can't fully explain that. I don't know how that works, but I trust, right? So there's not like there's ever going to be perfect answers. But this soldier didn't see anything miraculous or powerful. He just saw the way Jesus died, and something hit him and said, this man is the Son of God. Something inside him said, there's something different about this man, something bigger and better than me. Is there anyone here who maybe feels like that? Or like the mother, you don't have the answers, you don't have the pedigree, you don't have the credentials, but is there anything inside you that says, I need something, and there's something different about this? I can't even describe it, but there's something different about this. This mother and soldier were unqualified. I don't think I'll be able to write all of it. Unqualified, uneducated, and undeserving. They had all these gaps. They had no history, no knowledge, no righteous living even to speak of for the Roman officer who literally just made fun of Jesus or had his soldiers punch him and mock him. But they had, this is where this, that's what they had, a moment of desperation and a moment of willingness to say there's something different about this man. There's something different about this man. I'm going to invite the worship team up. We're going to finish with a chance to sing and respond. Andrew, could you relocate the board back over to the side? Mother and soldier were unqualified, uneducated, and undeserving, but that's where Jesus met them. In their lack of qualifications, in their lack of education, in their lack of being righteous and perfect. He met them there. They just had a shrivel of willingness and a shrivel of trying to see and understand who Jesus was, and he met them there. He's the God of the gaps. And so what? So here's the response today. So what? So what? So if you're here and something inside you says, yeah, I think I'm the Pharisees, I'm the unwilling. I live with my arms crossed, my nose up at God. Well, God, if you do this, then maybe I'll believe. I'm asking you this, that image, right? Like the nose up, hands. I'm asking you, maybe look down. Maybe break that shell of hardness, of resistance from that nose up imagery. Could something in you break and just, I don't know what God's going to do, but could you look down? Could you for a moment put aside whatever hurt or pride that is? Be like Nicodemus or be like Joseph. We're willing to do what their friends weren't. Just have a willingness. Just be open for a minute. If you're here and you're like the disciples, you're unsecure. Unsecure, right? God has done some things in your life, and yet we still freak out about what's coming up. Maybe for a few minutes you need to, quote unquote, look back. Right? Just look back and see what has God done. Remember what God has done in your life. Remember what he's spoken to you. Remember what his word says. Write something down. So if you're unwilling, right, look down. Break that stone of resistance. If you're unsecure, look back and remember what God has done. And maybe if you're here and you're unqualified, you're uneducated, and you're undeserving, just look up. Just have a moment where you say, Jesus, I don't know, but I need you. I don't know what this is, but I know I need something. Just look up at him for a second. He'll meet you. You have gaps, but he'll meet you. He doesn't care about the gaps. He'll meet you there. So we're going to sing one more song for just a couple minutes. And if you're a Pharisee, I'm asking you, could you look down and just be open and willing to meet Jesus? If you're a disciple and you're unsecure, could you look back and remember what he's done? And if you're a mother or a soldier, could you just be brave and look up, looking to Jesus for what you need? That's my ask today, church. He'll meet you in those gaps. We don't have all the answers. We don't have a perfect picture of how it's going to work. But he'll meet you in those gaps. I invite you to respond. Listen to him. Maybe he's talking to you. We'll sing just short chorus for a couple minutes. We want to get outside for our kiddos. But could we respond to what Jesus is speaking to you today?